Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mile Report. We'll be looking at last night's games and some of the interesting comments that have come out from the managers since uh, various results. We have to start with Liverpool and their shock defeat to Brighton. Um, Jurgen Klopp blamed mental fatigue for the loss, and when Andy Robertson was asked about the title race, he said quite clearly that Liverpool were not in it. They're 7 points behind, and City have a game in hand. So, it's in dire straits considering how easily they won last year, how big the gap is. It looks like it's a reversal with City winning this title quite comfortably. Um, and, you know, Jurgen Klopp's comments about mental fatigue, I think it's a fair comment. And, his style of football, it requires a lot of physical and mental energy. And it can be tiring, especially if you don't have the squad to rotate and you rely on the 10 to 15 players primarily. But I think what got them through in past seasons, and is a big factor, is the home crowd. And they're missing Anfield. And this is their first back to back home loss since 2012. And we know what the Anfield crowd can do, the energy they bring, how they push on the team, and they're missing them, especially when you're going through a hard time. Your fans can give you that extra energy to push, and they'll also keep you accountable when players are not, you know, living up to what they should do, and you can see they're not putting in the effort they're supposed to. Um, it's hard when they are not there, and when you're looking for that source of inspiration. While Klopp offers a lot of that, his energy on the sidelines, his man management skills. I think overall um, they've always been proud of their home record and their home fan base and the support they give and the effect it has on the players. And I think that was a big thing yesterday. I think it's a big thing this season. Last season they were so far ahead that they were so in the groove, and it didn't matter. And City was so off. They were so hampered by the injuries to their defense that they couldn't keep up, and the pressure wasn't quite on. Whereas now it's clear, there are a few teams in the race. I wouldn't include United, and they're feeling the pressure, the stress, and when you have even United, who has a squad that can be rotated better than what Jurgen Klopp has, it's difficult to maintain that mental energy. And I think he's spot on, and it's just that winning feeling as well that to keep that hunger. It's hard to maintain when you first get that victory, and that's what made Sir Alex's teams and some of those dynasties in all sports amazing when they can come back the following year and maintain that same hunger and energy to win more, forget about what happened last year and carry on. So I think Jurgen Klopp was spot on with the mental tiredness, and it should be interesting how they fare for the rest of the season. But I think they will, you know, um, you might see a bounce back on the weekend when they face City because they don't want to be embarrassed. But I think overall, um, they miss they're missing the fans because they're not going to get it in funding where they can replace like for like players. Keep that squad rotated. A big part of their uh, base is the support of the fans as well as the influence of their manager. And I think it's just not enough this season to get them through difficult periods, especially when they're losing games. In other news, we're seeing the brutal effect of the pandemic in total Premier Leagues, especially in the January window. Premier League clubs have spent just 84 million in January, and the biggest deal was the Diallo deal from Atlanta to United for 37 million, which was agreed last window. Um, The diminished tally represents a vast fall from the 230 million that was spent last January and a slump of 381 million from the 430 million which was spent a few seasons ago. Um, I just think that we can't underestimate the effect of COVID and the finances, and that could determine titles. It can determine who's getting relegated, not just who's clubs staying open or being going bankrupt and um, being closed down. This is going to affect everything, and clearly the teams that can shoulder through during these times are going to benefit from this, and the ones who are already struggling are going to be even more impacted. And as I mentioned, it's not just the teams that are, the clubs that are being closed down due to financial issues. This is having a bigger impact on um, big impact on the title race. When City can spend 60 odd million on Diaz to improve their defense, and Liverpool have to turn to Kabak and Davis for 1.6 million. It tells you the impact of not having the home income, and not only are they missing the fans, Liverpool, they seem to be missing the income because they have more resources than what they've been able to spend this window, and clearly, like most clubs, they've been affected by this. Um, and in other news, uh, the hot topic at the moment is Arsenal's resurgence after that awful run they had prior to Christmas. They've been on a great run, and I think the problem we have is that we're quite often told that old is gold, and the value of experience is everything. And they made these signings like the Willian and David Luiz, etc., without really thinking about what they might detract by bringing those players in. Um, according to the Premier League tracking data, Arsenal are covering more ground, registering more high intensity sprints than they were before Christmas. They're also making more ball recoveries and winning more duels and tackles. The increased emphasis on pressing high up the pitch can be seen in their numbers and high turnovers, which have nearly doubled, and their press sequences, which are defined by the opposition's passing sequences of three or fewer passes ending in their own half. Arsenal are allowing their opponents far less time on the ball to build attacks. So what's behind this resurgence? Well, clearly it's not the tactic of going and signing experienced players like Willian. It's been the change in process since Christmas, which is the trust in the youth players like Emil Smith Rowe and Martinelli, who have joined Saka in the first team fold. And the new emphasis on the youth has helped transform the side's approach out of possession. Smith Rowe, in particular, has been integral to Arsenal's improvement in possession, as well as out of it. It's not just about the quality of his final ball, it's the little things. The selfless runs to create spaces for his teammates, the quick 1-2s, the breaks between defensive lines, and sending Arsenal away on the attack. Arteta is trying to build a squad like City's on a shoestring budget, but they should no longer waste money on players like Willian, old and out of date. But he needs to find a way to continue to do this with young players with potential who can also bring intensity and aggression that Arteta requires. Finally, I'm just going to talk about tonight's game with Tottenham versus Chelsea. Um, See, in life, timing is everything. It's not so much with who or where, but when something happens. If you're driving along and the car breaks down in the middle of the day, miles from home, that's annoying, but it's not a crisis. However, if you were to break down in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, now that's a disaster. So Tottenham are going into this game on a bad run, playing awful football, and will be without Harry Kane. There are too many things that don't look right now from this Tottenham side. Jose's mannerisms, the way he puts little messages out to people, not good signs to be honest, because they were flying earlier in the season. And Mourinho said yesterday, I don't think it's very difficult to coach Chelsea about this game, coming up game, because I was champion 3 times. Ancelotti was a champion. Conte was a champion. It cannot be very, very difficult because we win titles there. And that's just Mourinho again, slightly pushing the bitter and toxic narrative to protect him and put the pressure on Thomas Tuchel. But the fact that there is no pressure on Tuchel. If Chelsea lose, then they're just adjusting under a new manager, whereas Tottenham and Mourinho are continuing their downward spiral. Um, Tuchel has, since coming in, has added a bit of belief and energy to Chelsea's attack, and this just looks like a perfect time to play Spurs to me. Harry Kane alleviates a creative load on the Spurs central midfield, but without him in the team, Højbjerg is forced into doing a job that does not really fit him or his industrial style. And I can see Chelsea completely dominating this midfield battle tonight, and I'll be surprised if they don't win quite comfortably. And it's going to be, and you won't be surprised by how toxic Mourinho's post game interview will be. But it will be entertaining as always. Thank you for joining me.